Hi, this is Carmen with Painted and Planted, and today we're going to make over this cute little vintage side table. This looks like something that my grandmother might have owned and then passed down to one of my brothers when they were in their rock metal phase. It has a lot of damage, it has carvings and scratches, the veneer's missing, so it's a really good project to paint. First thing, I'm just going to sand off the old finish so that my paint will adhere nice and smooth, and this also gives me an opportunity to sand out some of the scratches and dents in the legs of the dresser and the sides of the dresser. Now for this project, today I'm going to be using Dixie Belle chalk paint. The first color I'm using is called Collard Greens, and it is a gorgeous green color. I'm also using one of Dixie Belle's paintbrushes. The method that I have read for using Dixie Belle chalk paint is to spray your brush frequently so that you are applying the chalk paint with just a little bit of water. Now, as we go through this video, my main goal is to learn how to blend two colors together. And I made quite a few mistakes during my first attempt. This is something I've never done before, so I'm going to highlight my mistakes as we go through the video, so hopefully you won't make the same mistakes. The other thing I'd like to recommend is when you're considering the type of paint you want to purchase, there are a lot of different products at a lot of different cost points, but you always want to think about how many coats of the product are you going to have to use. And I can tell you with Dixie Belle, the color saturation is fantastic, and it's only going to take me 1 to 2 coats to get a deep, rich color. So while I might save a little bit of money going with a less expensive product, sometimes you end up having to use more of that product, so it kind of washes out in the end. Now, I've watched a lot of YouTube videos on blending, and there's a couple different techniques that I've seen. One is where you apply a solid base coat, and then the other is where you apply your two colors. So I'm trying the two colored method. I'm now coming in at the center of the sides, top, and the drawer with a second color of Dixie Belle paint in dried sage. My goal is to come back once this first coat is dry and then blend these two shades together. Now this is where I make my first mistake. This light colored patch is way too big for the size of the furniture because I want a very subtle blending, and I'll show you in a minute what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm getting ready to try blending for the very first time. I'm getting my 2 shades of paint ready. I've got my continuous spray water bottle, and I have my Dixie Belle Best Stain brush. I have to tell you, this brush, it's a little pricey, but it feels fantastic in my hand. All of the bristles are uniform in size and length, and none of them are falling out on me. So I am really excited to try out this brush. So first thing I'm doing is I'm just spraying it down with water and then wiping it off to remove any dust that may have gotten on my table over the last couple days. I usually use a lint-free cloth, but I just grabbed a paper towel since I was at my kitchen table. So now I'm spraying the brush and then getting ready to apply a fresh coat of the dried sage in the middle. And then I'm going to switch to a different brush and apply a fresh layer of the collard greens. And this is where I make my second mistake. When you are first painting with chalk paint, you want to spray your brush. However, when you're blending, you want to keep misting the paint surface on the furniture to keep that paint nice and moist and pliable. Once it starts to dry, you're going to feel your brush dragging. Here's where I made mistake number 3. You've always got to turn your brush so that you keep the light color on the inside and you don't get the light colored paint on the outside of your area. And you can see I'm still kind of using my angled brush at this point to blend it a little bit, and it's just kind of making a big old mess. But I'm going to trust the process, and I am going to keep going. Now I'm coming in with the Best Stain brush, and yes, I sprayed the brush instead of spraying the surface of the paint like I should have. I'm going to try doing just a few strokes across to see if I can soften some of those lines where the two paints meet. And it's very hard to film chalk paint and blending, but you can see that I'm not getting a real smooth, even blend here. So I put a little bit more water on my brush, and now I'm going to come in and I'm going to try to do a little bit more focused on the edges and using kind of a circular back and forth motion. It's funny how you think that you know how to do this after watching videos, but once you've got the brush and the paint in your hand, you kind of just forget what you're doing and try whatever you think will work at the moment. I don't like how light it's getting towards the sides, so I came back in and added a little bit more of the collard greens, and I should have sprayed it with water at this point because I can tell looking at my video that my brush was definitely dragging a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to go back in with the larger brush, and this is where I started doing the little circles. And you can see that doing the little circles seems to blend it a little bit better, but I'm still not quite getting the look that I am after. So this is the back of the little side table. I figured the back would be the best place to start because if I screwed up, well, most of the time people aren't going to see the back of the furniture. The other great thing about using a small piece as a starter piece is that it's really easy, if you don't like the way that it looks, to go back in, paint over it, and do it again. I've seen a lot of people also, they'll do one pass at the shading and then they'll come back in and do a second layer. So if I don't get it perfect, hopefully the second layer will correct any of the mistakes that I've made. All right, now we're getting ready to move on and work on another side of this little table. It's not too bad. But I'm going to show you, I'm going to come back a little later in the video and show you where I made a huge mistake on this one that I couldn't see until it dried. So here we go on one of the sides. Once again, that's probably a larger area of the light colored paint than I should have applied. Now I'm coming in with the collard greens, putting a fresh layer down around all of the edges. I'm still spraying the brush at this point and not spraying the surface of the table like I should have been. Doing a little bit better though about remembering to turn and rotate my brush so that I'm keeping the light paint pointed towards the light and the dark paint pointed towards the dark. Okay, now I'm going to come in with my circular round brush. And this time I'm sticking with the little circle techniques that seem to work a little bit better on the backside. Kind of looks like a moon on a cloudy night, but I definitely want to blend until I don't have a distinct line between the two colors. So not too bad, but it's really hard to tell until it dries what it's actually going to look like. I had to touch up a little bit of my legs and the top here where I had applied some of the blended paint because I want to keep those the dark colored greens. So this has some potential. The colors do look really pretty when they're blended together. So now we're coming in on the other side. I am still using the same technique of putting the white paint in the middle and then some fresh green paint on the outside. Mistake number 4, okay, right there you can see it on the right side. I didn't turn my brush and I am kind of just getting the white paint all over the place instead of keeping it focused on the center of the side of the table. So you really want to pay attention when you're blending to how you're holding your brush and where you're getting the lighter and the darker colors. I'm coming in with my round brush, once again, kind of using those large circles, applying kind of nice steady pressure. If I feel like it's starting to drag or rub off the paint underneath, that's when I have been stopping and putting down a little bit more fresh paint. You can see I got a little bit on the top again, so I'm going to have to go back in with my collard greens and fix that. This one, it actually gave me a really pretty blend almost immediately. Like, I like the way that it looks. We'll see what it looks like, though, when it dries. Fixing up where I had a little bit of overlap on the sides there. I want those to just be solid collard greens. Okay, now we're getting ready to do the top. Now the top of this piece was in pretty bad shape, and it's still not perfect. I sanded it down, did a little bit of basic repair, but it still has a little bit of damage from the in the veneer. All right, here we go. So once again, I'm coming in, spraying my brush, putting down some fresh dried sage, and then coming and putting in some fresh collard greens. Now here is where I think I made my next mistake. Yes, this is where I made mistake number 5. I did not take the fresh layer of paint all the way to the edges. I only concentrated them on the center. And with a piece this small, I really should have gone all the way to each of the edges so I would get a really nice, pretty blend. Okay, coming back in with the round brush, the circular technique I've learned works pretty well for this piece and these two colors. It kind of helps soften that edge between where the two paints met. So I can tell you, I've watched so many videos, and this is definitely a lot more challenging than it looks. It also just doesn't photograph or video very well. When I'm looking at it in person, it looks a little bit different to me than it looks when I'm looking through the camera or when I'm watching the video playback. I guess that's probably just due to the lighting. I try to do as much of my painting in natural light as I can, and right now I'm in my kitchen and I'm right next to my back door sliding glass door, and I have all of the windows around me open so that I'm utilizing natural lighting. All right, so I've got those two colors blended. It's kind of struggling a little bit. I can still see a little bit of a line between the two colors, but we'll wait and see what it looks like when it dries. The drawer of the piece, this was probably the easiest piece for me because I want it to have more of the light colored paint. So I'm coming in, I'm applying a pretty big piece of the dried sage color. And then now I'm going to come back with the collard greens on the two sides, the top and the bottom. Once again, you got to make sure you're paying attention. You notice how I flipped the brush when I took it to the other side so that I'm keeping the light color on the inside and the dark color on the outside. Now adding some fresh paint on the top and the bottom. And then this piece it lends itself really well to kind of some long strokes to see if we can keep it to where you've got that kind of pretty spotlight in the center and then gradually getting darker towards the edges of the drawer. So I start in the middle because I want to keep a pretty good amount of the pale color in the middle, blending the top and the bottoms to get rid of those harsh lines. Trying the little circle approach here on the sides. You can see right now one side is much more blended. There we go. So we're bringing the dark color in to meet it, to even it out. And then back to kind of some long strokes. This really is a lot of trial and error. And, I tried doing some blending on a piece of wood one time, and to me, it's just easier to do the trial and error on the piece, and definitely use a small dresser or side table like this for your first blending project. So I kind of like the way that drawer turned out with, very, very little blending. So here we go. I told you I made a big mistake on the back. Mistake number 6 is I didn't keep it damp enough. I let it get too dry and it brushed through my base layer. So that means I have got to go in and apply a new base layer. So this time I'm going to try to apply what I've learned going through the process. I'm going to use the technique where I put down a solid layer of the collard greens first, and then just come in with a little bit of the dried sage in the middle of this while the paint is still nice and damp. And you can see I am now spraying the surface of the paint rather than spraying my brush. I live in Arizona, things dry really fast, and I want to keep that paint nice and soft and damp. So see, you can see the difference already by spraying the paint instead of the brush. It's just gliding a lot easier. I'm able to move my brush with very little effort. And by just applying that little bit of the lighter color in the middle, it's giving me a really pretty blend. I had been using way too much of the lighter paint in my previous attempts. So there we go. We've got now that kind of light center fading to dark on the edges. So I let that all dry for about 24 hours, and then I wanted to see what it looked like with the hardware. I had just cleaned the existing hardware with some Barkeeper's Friend, put it back in place, and here's what it looks like out in natural light. You can see there's still way too much of the light color on the top and the sides. It almost feels kind of like the moon shining through clouds to me, and that's not the look that I was going for. So I am going to redo the top and the sides. This time, using everything that I've learned, I'm doing a solid coat of the dark color, the collard greens. Misting the paint as I go to keep it nice and soft and pliable. And I'm putting just a nice light even coat. You don't want a lot of paint. You just want a nice light coat of the paint. All right, so now I've got my collard greens in place. Then I give it one more mist and switch to my little brush, and let's dab some of that dried sage in the middle. Notice I'm putting a much smaller area of the sage color than I did the first attempt. And now I keep misting, and I'm coming in with that round brush and just going in little circles, moving outwards. Doing a little bit of back and forth, making sure that I go in opposite directions. And this is really helping to distribute the paint and get rid of those lines that separated the two colors. Coming in from the outside brings your dark color into the center. And then just lots and lots of blending. And when I feel like I'm starting to get too many circle shapes, that's when I start doing the back and forth. Oops, I had a little bit of lint there that I had to get. There we go. So that back and forth, that really helps eliminate any of the circles or the paint strokes from showing through. Added a little bit more water. And this is much more subtle than it was the first time. I'm getting the look that I was going for, where you go from the dark shades on the outer edge to just a little bit lighter on the inside. It's much more subtle than it was before. I'm not going to touch the drawer. I really like the way that the drawer turned out. I'm going to redo one of the sides. I'm using everything that I learned. Apply a nice even coat. Just a little bit of the dried sage. And then come in with a fresh spray of water and my round brush to alternate doing the circles and paint and brushing across and then brushing up and down. They say that the closer in color the two shades are that you're blending, the easier for your first try. So that's why I kind of picked two colors that were in the same family, just lighter and darker. They both kind of have that green color. So here we go. Here it is after my second attempt, and I am much happier with this now. It no longer looks like a moon shining through the clouds. It's a little bit more subtle, and I think I'm going to stop at this point. I hope that you've learned something by watching this, and I hope that I have given you the motivation to try blending. Please watch my other videos, subscribe, like, and share. I look forward to seeing you next time.